Okay, again, I had some downtime and I thought, let me vomit my ideas on paper of what's happening. And when I do that, I put this all down on here. And when I do that, I find that I can see a little bit more clearly. So I initially started looking at just like Trump and then what to look for, but it expanded. And the long and short of this is I'm very hopeful for Ukraine. And you'll understand why after I explain what's going on. Okay, so first, let's start. Okay, Trump, he wants a deal. He wants a deal far more than Zelensky and Putin want a deal. He's pushing for the deal. First day in office, no, 90 days. Well, 90 days is going to be April 20th. So that's one of those dates to look for. But he talked about how he's pissed at Putin now. Well, okay, because Putin's not doing what he thought he was going to do. And Trump keeps talking about how he believes that Putin will uphold his end of the bargain. So he's going to run into reality eventually that Putin is not going to uphold his end of the bargain. He's going to be all talk, and then Trump's going to look weak. I think that helps me be optimistic about the future because I think Trump will eventually get that. Eventually. He's not going to do that naturally. He'll have to learn this the hard way. Okay, so he's pissed at Putin, and Trump wants this more. As I said, Trump is in this dispositional place where he wants to believe that Putin's going to do the right thing. And as I think about it, like, okay, I gave you the zigzag theory, right? If he zigs and then zags, you'll see where Trump is. Or if he's just zigs and zigs and zigs toward Putin, you know where he is. So far, he hasn't zagged. I don't think he wants to zag. He'll only zag if it comes to Putin forcing him to zag by not doing what he wants him to do. And I don't think that Trump is a Manchurian candidate. I don't think he's compromised. I don't know that there's anything that Putin could have that could compromise him as far as embarrassing or anything. But I think dispositionally, Trump wants to support Putin. Like that's where he is, as far as I can tell. Now, as far as influencing Trump, Democrats condemning him has zero effect. In fact, it actually hurts the process. If you're going to be like a Democratic senator or congressman and you're going to have some effect, it'd be far better to get with Trump on the side and quietly behind closed doors and say, look, I'm not going to criticize you here publicly, but you need to understand this is happening and that's happening and this is happening. And it's simply like, I don't even like you, but for patriotic purposes, I want the U.S. to not have this happen. And so I'm trying to, like, that would be a far better tack than to publicly condemn him, because when a Democrat publicly condemns Trump about anything related to Ukraine, it just gets, well, Russia, 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 and he wipes it off. So I don't know that that's necessarily the best tack. Now, Republicans, where are you? Right? Like, you should know better and you should be saying something. And a few more have started stepping up, but they're not enough yet. Chairs of certain committees and things have started doing this, but not nearly where it needs to be. Now, Trump is hearing it from people like that he trusts to be certain ways. Like Boris Johnson, I think he trusts weirdly. I mean, those two kind of get along, but he's been hearing it consistently from Boris. Starmer and Macron, he's been hearing it from, and they do a good diplomatic job. But he's a little skeptical of Europe, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But he started to hear it from Sikorsky was talking about it, and Sikorsky's been pretty consistent with this, but he's been, I think, making some inroads, and Trump likes Poland better than other parts of Europe. The Poles are just different, and they were even talking about having like Fort Trump or something like that in Poland at one point, or at least this was a rumor. And then now he's heard it from President Stubb of Finland, saying like, well, can you trust Putin? No, you can't trust Putin. I think that kind of messaging is starting to get through when he's hearing it from these multiple sources that are a little bit different. Not that it's shaken him or changed his policy. He's still zigging, but I think the greatest effect will be when his pastor, who has been talking about what he saw in Bucha, his chief pastor that he listens to, I think he'll start to have more of an effect. I think if you could have more of the effect from the evangelical church, not just soaking in Russian narratives. Now, it's bad things are happening too, right? Like Tim Pool is going to be in the press pool. Well, that's not because of Ukraine. It's because of other things. There's other like conservative and I shouldn't say conservative, I should say more Republicanish, kind of pressing back against other liberal stuff. That's why he's there, but that's not a good thing. Okay, so the pastor and Bruce. Okay, so now then I think about, like, okay, Vance. Why is Vance, and I read a headline about talking about how Vance is hostile toward Europe. Why is he so hostile to Europe? And that's, there's something to Vance with the, we should be manufacturing more. Things are in China, and Europe is ripping us off, and Europe's taking advantage of us. I keep hearing the same refrain. There's like this almost a victim mentality about how Europe has ripped us off kind of narrative within Vance, and Europe has suddenly become the bad guys. Does that make Russia good? No, but by contrast, in his mind, it seems that Europe is ripping us off. Russia's not asking for anything. They're not asking for military defense. They're essentially maybe neutral, which is crazy because Russia is still the bad guys, and they don't like us. They don't want us to succeed. They don't want us to prosper, but they're open to making deals because it's helping them achieve their agenda. And again, they're not ripping us off in the way that he's thinking about it. Okay. Now I think there are some stories, by the way, with Europe. The key to much of this is Europe stepping up in a meaningful way to do what Europe needs to do. That'll take a lot of the air out of the or oxygen out of the fire that is the way that Trump and Vance see Europe. As the U.S. looks more to China, which is our military doctrine of we can fight one war in one theater at a time, because that's how our military is built right now. And we look to China potentially popping off against Ukraine. That's part of this, why we can't get embroiled. It's all part of the picture. Tariffs, I think, will become a big story over time because it's going to hurt the U.S. economy. I've been talking about this in any economic context for 20 years about tariffs are not healthy for us. They're just going to protect the domestic producers, which Vance likes because we should have more manufacturing here, but it's going to hurt our consumers. So that's why that's a story. I don't think that Greenland is going to become important. I don't think Panama is going to become important. Like, there's not going to be a hostile takeover of Greenland, I don't believe. I don't think the idea of a third term is going to become important. This is just, it's the noise. It's not the signal. Now, I'm hopeful in some ways, like 5 million drones they're talking about in Ukraine now. They were talking about producing 4 million just a few months ago. They're talking about 5 million by the end of the year. The greater EU support that, like yesterday, the meeting in Kyiv, I think was very useful. Greater capacity. I see all these things as very positive things. Okay, let's talk about some dates real quick and we'll be done. Trump wanted a ceasefire deal, day one, which is now April 20th, which is 90 days from when he takes office. I don't think anything's going to happen. But around the same time, like already before this, you're going to see Russia starting to remobilize 160,000 men. Like, that's because they lost a huge number in 2024, and they're going to need to do that, and they're going to be mobilizing that really soon. Constantine, when I was talking to him, was telling me that look for the date of the parade, the May military parade, if Putin declares some kind of fuller mobilization. Now, this first mobilization is going to be a big thing. And I've seen people, like, there are articles I'll be talking about later where, like, people are just trying to not do their job or running away from a construction site or whatever so they don't get mobilized by the Russian Federation. So look for those kind of things. Though that parade, though, that's going to be a telling point to see how much, if Putin's all in regardless, or if it's less than that. And then new offensive, 3 to 6 months of an offensive is what most prognosticators are talking about. That should kick off probably in May or June, as I understand. So we're getting close to something, and there's no sense that Russia wants a ceasefire in any way, shape, or form, as far as I can tell. They still want to take more of Ukraine, and essentially because they want to punish Ukrainians for being disloyal Russians who called themselves Ukrainians, but they're really Russians, and they need to be exterminated. That's the way that they're thinking about things. And so this is all the context that I can bring you. I'm not sure what I can do to summarize it, other than I feel somewhat hopeful that Ukraine will just carry on, and there won't be a really bad, um, ill-fated ceasefire that's going to really turn the screws on Ukraine, or that they won't be committing to that. Over time, the U.S. will lose more and more leverage over Ukraine to come to a bad ceasefire agreement. So that's where I am. I'm hopeful. How about you? Put that in the comments below. Tell me what you're thinking or how you're processing. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.